Morning.
Morning, greetings. Shirt.
Melanie should be with us in just a minute or two.
Sounds good. Janelle, what do you hope to get accomplished today that we haven't done before?
I am hoping for a determination of how we want to move forward with this. And I've got both Robin and Brent here to answer any questions. So hopefully we can get a path forward this morning. So how are you this morning?
Oh, sleeping less and less. I was up at 4:30 this morning dreaming about this meeting. No, it was a nightmare, sorry. I have a Fitbit. My friends use their Fitbit to keep track of their exercise. I use it to keep track of my sleep, or lack of sleep.
I know a lot of people who do that.
Yeah.
All right, we're still waiting for Melanie. And Charlie has joined us as well. So if there's additional questions, Charlie can help answer. But we definitely have Brent and Robin, our experts, here to provide us expertise.
So I heard earlier this week, we got 7 inches of rain almost on Friday from that storm, a big flush.
My backyard looks like it's dry now.
Yeah, took a while. My goldfish were almost swimming in the backyard, but not quite.
I heard the ducks and the frogs were really enjoying the pond in my backyard.
They would. If I catch a bullfrog in my pond, I can give it to you. Relocate.
They've got no place to go now. It's all dried out, so they have found somewhere else to go.
Oh, okay. We don't have an official pond.
I don't have an official pond, but when we get that much
Oh,
rain, my backyard turns into a pond.
okay. There she goes. Whoop. Came and went.
Here we go. Good morning.
Morning.
Hi there.
So per the planning commission meeting, we have both Brent and Robin joining us today. And Charlie is also on the line listening. So if we need any additional advice, but I think we've got our expertise here to answer any questions.
Great.
So
Who is the floodplain administrator for the city?
Robin.
Robin is?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And Brent, what is his role?
He's an engineer.
Okay.
So he helps
be.
the city with our engineering items.
Right. Okay, so I think we have two things on the agenda today. One is, can we resolve our proposal on floodplain fill? And the other is the possible extension to additional topics in the floodplain regulations as we were directed by Drew. So Janelle, I saw your comment about possible problems with staff time, and I'm assuming that's you.
That would be me and Robin. And just for clarification, Brent is also certified floodplain manager. So the first thing, I just want to get through what this group was originated to address is fill in the floodplain. Because this group came out of a directive from council to determine whether or not we should allow fill in the floodplain. So I'd really like to focus on that. I know there's a bigger topic of looking at the floodplain regulations. I have serious concerns about that because it requires a lot of time from me, Robin, DEMA, and FEMA. And I think we'd also need to get some directive from council on that because that is a huge lift to be looking at.
Okay, I'll send an email to Drew and tell him that there are concerns about extending our focus. Okay?
Well, you all have my comments, my marked up comments on that section 197-73. So that's a starting point in my primitive style of updating. But I would like to take the bull by the horns and just say, according to what I've read and seen lately, I would like to encourage fill in the floodplain as long as it meets the criteria set out in the floodplain ordinance, which is basically has no adverse effect on adjacent properties. I would like to see homeowners use fill to protect their properties as long as they don't endanger adjacent property owners. Simple.
Okay. Which I think goes to the original memo or here, let me show. Sorry. Still needing a little caffeine to get going this morning. So this is what we had originally put together. So which I think addresses what Joe was talking about, that making sure it doesn't have an impact on the neighboring, which again, it can't per some other regulations. This one is just an additional item to those items that you were referencing, Joe. I know, Melanie, you had some concerns, which is why we're back together today. I also have yours for discussion, and I've got Brent and Robin joining us. And Brent, you are muted to help us answer some of your questions. So I thought we had consensus on this, which is, again, you guys were good with allowing fill in the floodplain as long as we had a report that said that the existing and proposed floodplain capacity and document that are completed don't meet or exceed the existing floodplain capacity.
Two questions, Janelle.
Yes.
What subdivision? Is this major or minor? And then again, which floodplain?
So it would be any of the floodplains. Again, this is part of the floodplain section of the code. And we can make it major or minor or all subdivisions.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're doing a minor subdivision where you're splitting one lot into two, are you opening up this can of worms on, you know, a private homeowner who was subdividing his lot so his family could move in next door or something?
So based on the way the wording is, because we have it at preliminary consent, it's going to be for a major subdivision because minors don't go through the preliminary consent process.
Okay. If it's going to be major, I think we should spell it out instead of
Okay, I
just
can.
making it generic.
Melanie, any questions on concerns about that?
Well, my position is certainly that any fill in the floodplain ultimately affects the neighbors. And, you know, it's an incremental crawl, but it happens. And I would rather see it prohibited from any and all subdivisions, or be a standard for, let me put it that way, that it be a standard for any and all subdivisions. I mean, there's no doubt that filling the floodplain ultimately, and we have a report from 2019. The floodplain report showed demonstrably that additional development that fills the floodplain raises the floodplain on other properties. And, you know, I just think that's unfair. I wouldn't want my neighbor affecting my property adversely, and yet that's what we're allowing people to do.
So the intent of what was proposed here was that you can fill it, but you have to make sure that you're not negatively impacting the floodplain capacity. So you wouldn't negatively impact your neighboring property, which also would be addressed in a number of other items that city and state code have requirements for.
Well, I understand, and yes, it's here, but it's a little, I find it's a little wishy-washy, that it's not very firm. And I think the language that I added perhaps can be tweaked, but I think it makes it a little more definitive.
Okay, so what you proposed is that there's no net loss of natural floodplain storage or
Right.
increase in water surface elevations during the base flood. I think we've had this discussion about the no net loss because of the way the city is. I know you took this, was it from somewhere in Maryland, I believe, correct?
No, this is from the State Association of Floodplain Managers.
Okay.
This is their recommendation.
They have a report out from this year, February of 2020, that I sent a copy to everybody about, you know, their first two choices are waiting for your local government to do something or take action on your own to reduce flood damage. And one of their, in February 2020, they said to direct water away from your structure with fill, be careful not to direct flows onto another property. So, I mean, fill is being recommended here by the Association of State Floodplain Managers as a possible solution to flooding as long as you don't endanger your neighbors. So, you know, they're being wishy-washy perhaps, you know.
Well, I haven't seen that language, so I'm not sure exactly how it's applied. But, you know, they do recommend this no net loss approach because, and you know, I think that there's support for this in some of the city's other studies. For example, in the 2015 comprehensive plan, there's language that says that Lewis is working within its limited resources, et cetera, to consider, adopt, and implement as feasible plans, processes, and projects to mitigate the effects of flooding. And that's what this language would do. It would mitigate the effects of flooding by not permitting any more impacts. And then also the comprehensive plan is recommended in the Quinn report to prohibit fill buildings and outdoor storage of materials in the 100-year floodplain. So we're complying with the comprehensive plan by this language.
So
We're
Robin,
also,
go ahead.
we're also doing the engineering studies. We're having language in our ordinance about having engineers like Charlie or Brent look at the site plans and check out what impact the site plan will have on the floodplain. And that will be the decision as what to be made.
So Brent and Robin.
Their study is also based on the developer's engineering study, because that will define the floodplain on the property as well as any impacts based upon the fill.
So Brent and Robin, are there issues with what Melanie has proposed or what we had worked out with the other one that you could see if we started implementing regarding no net loss or requiring a report? Because you're both the certified floodplain managers. I'd like your input on because again, this was also a request of planning chair, that you guys can provide some expertise that, to help guide us to find a path forward.
But this is the first time I've seen this revision, but I know there has been discussions about it. And as I've said in the past, I'm not saying concerned, but I am concerned about the no net loss at all. How that kind of does a total restriction, I think, on what is available on a property or what is available to do on a property. That's, I think, my biggest hurdle that we have to try to work through. I understand, again, it's where we're talking about, fill in general. Again, I think we've also had a conversation a little bit about, it appears to be just going to be just as for major subdivisions, not individual lots. So that's just, I think, where I'm at.
So from what I'm getting, this would just be for major subdivisions.
Yeah, that's from what I've seen from the last, or what the discussion was this time.
Well, Charlie, what I find flexible about this language is that, say you have a property that's almost an island, separated by floodplain from the mainland. This would allow you to construct a road across the floodplain and to access your quote-unquote island, as long as you compensate for that fill someplace on your site. So it doesn't say you can't fill, it says if you fill, compensate.
So I think my concern there is, how do you create new floodplain? And I'm going to ask that to Brent and Robin.
Well, I think you excavate. It's a cubic square footage or cubic square yard computation. So if you fill and you've added so many cubic feet of fill to the wetlands, then you have to excavate that somewhere else and create it. Create the storage area that you've taken up.
So going down that path, so there's several things working right now within the Lewis Planning Commission that people are looking at. The sea level rise committee is one.
Right.
So if you have a major subdivision that is touched partially in, fully in a floodplain, and you want to bring 1 truckload of fill above what's there, then it would require removing a truckload or however. That brings in permitting for the replacement hole that you're going to dig. You're going to bring in fill to try to get the sea level rise component in there, because we're discussing not only the 18 inches above the floodplain, but an additional freeboard amount above that. So I can see sites where you're going to bring 100 truckloads in order to make the homes and the roads flood worthy, but it may or may not affect the neighbor, and you would have to go through this study to prove the effects. But a one-to-one replacement of it may not necessarily be feasible, because then you'd be in the wetlands, you'd be into permitting, you'd be looking at Army Corps permits for replacement. It just opens up a whole lot of other things along with it.
But you've got to get a permit for the fill anyway. So
The permit for the fill would just be a grading permit from Conservation District.
well, if you're affecting the floodplain, don't you have to go to the Corps for a permit?
If you're doing normal construction within the floodplain, Robin can provide a building permit for that. And if you're disturbing more than 5,000 square feet, it's Sussex Conservation District.
Yeah, if you get into the wetlands, you need Corps of Engineers approval for that. But otherwise, it's just local permits for construction.
As long as you're staying out of the wetlands, you're okay.
Yes.
And technically at this point, we don't have, or Lewis doesn't have anything approved in the wetlands realm. We've got it in the works for tomorrow night, but.
Right. Well, I think that should be part of the process. If you have to get a permit, you have to get a permit. Our intent is to discourage this type of development. If I'm reading the comprehensive plan correctly and the floodplain study, I think this is the direction we're going in.
So currently the code already has restrictions for like new development. It's encouraged that you stay out of the floodplain. You've seen that in other developments that have come through, that you are encouraged to not build within the 100-year floodplain. Now for existing lots, you just have to build. Well, no, like you've reviewed some developments that they stayed out. There's no development in the 100-year floodplain. They got the development to be outside, but we do have a good chunk of the city that's in the floodplain already, and that when you build, you have to build to the freeboard requirement for the FEMA regulations. And even some of those allow fill to be brought in for certain things. I think it's only the VE, if I'm not mistaken, Robin, is where you cannot bring fill in for FEMA. But the others, FEMA does allow fill to be brought in to help with grading and other things that you need to do when you're doing construction.
Well, if something is required on a development that needs some relief, then can't you go for a Board of Appeals variance or whatever it might be called here?
So a Board of Adjustment would be a little bit different.
Convoluted.
and there are different requirements that you'd have to meet for that, especially since FEMA says you can fill. And I think what this committee was asked to look at is, do we want to continue allowing fill in the floodplain? And I'm not thinking it's construction. I think it's more, I mean, because if you say no more construction in the floodplain, that's a much bigger issue for the city. But if we're looking at new development and we want to protect that, there may be reasons that the developer may need to grade and do other things. Like if they're going to put their stormwater management in the floodplain, they're going to need to grade that. They might need to bring in fill to do that, you know, because typically the floodplain is going to be the lower part. So you want your water to drain towards that, if I'm not mistaken. Guys can, so we would want to do that, but I think what we want to make sure is that we're not flooding anybody else, or we're not creating a worse floodplain, which is I think why we put together that report.
Robin, do you know if stormwater management is permitted in floodplain?
Yeah.
Wire.
It is allowed?
It's required if you disturb over 5,000 square feet.
But if you have a development that's adjoining the floodplain, you can put your stormwater in the floodplain?
Yes.
I'm gonna guess that's like the most logical place to put it, Brent and Robin, because it's the lower point and you can build capacity for that and other mechanisms to address it since you're already there. If that makes any
Correct.
sense. Because why would you, to me, this is my logic, why would you put it in the high spot when the floodplain is the low spot and you want to grade it towards the low spot anyhow? Because it's already draining towards that location. Did I get that right, Brent?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, well, Joe, is there any way that you suggest tweaking this language, or Robin or Brent?
I would like to see everything printed out and report everybody's opinion and backup and information, emails I've sent from Brent, put in a package and submitted to the Planning Commission for review on this subject. I mean, it's just, it sounds simple, but it's very complicated. And I think the whole Planning Commission should look at this, look at the ordinance and look at everything we've got, every opinion, every backup, and we could slug it out sometime.
Robin, do you have any suggestions?
Again, I'm concerned about the ramifications of a total no net loss. That's my only concern, and how that's going to be somehow worked out. And I don't say it's my only concern, but you know, in general, you know, some people can go to say just don't allow it. Any building, which Janelle just said that's a another issue. You know, and it's been done, but it's just that's going to be probably a very hard sell. So there's got to be some sort of balance, I think. And again, I understand we don't want to cause any issues with the neighbors, but I think there's mechanisms in place to ensure that doesn't happen.
Well, based on some recent things that we've seen, I don't think so.
So I think what Robin and Brent have both been saying is that there are criteria for stormwater management. I know for stormwater management, if you do a new development, you can't create any more water than what currently exists going on to the neighbor. I know the sea level rise is working on looking at regulations that could actually help this. I know the mitigation team will be looking at options to help address some of this, and I know the wetlands buffer that we'll have the public meeting tomorrow night to get comments on. I think that would also help with some of this concern about flooding, because I think all of these together will help address the flooding concerns that are going on.
Well, I don't believe they do. I mean, I think they will improve future work, but you know, people already have problems, and unless we control how the floodplain can be affected, I think people will be very afraid of any new subdivisions that come along.
So any proposal that's coming out is only going to affect new development. It's not going to impact what's currently going on.
Right.
Until some type of new development, redevelopment happens for those parcels. And then of course they'll have to comply with whatever flood regulations and other regulations that the city has adopted. So this will only impact new development. So I understand your concern about existing development. This and any new regulation are going to impact new development. So what we already have in place is protecting what we currently have that is developed.
Hopefully.
To the degree it has been required to. You know, we're a low spot, we have flooding, it does exist, you know, so, you know, we're looking at trying to find ways to address that, but there are current rules and regulations that are in place to address current flooding. And you know, I think what we're trying to do is how do we make that better? And it's multiple different committees working on the same kind of items of like, how do we protect property?
Right, I couldn't agree more that we have to address this from many fronts to make a stronger and more protected community. Correct. Brent, do you have any suggestions here?
Just here to answer questions.
I'm sorry?
So I'm just here to answer questions.
Well, I'm asking, do you have any suggestions on this language?
Not right at the moment, no.
Okay.
I would like other people to look at it and kind of let it sort itself out. And then maybe discuss it a little bit further, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I just don't want it, I don't want it to have bullet holes in it already. And I'm not saying it does. I'm not attacking it. I just want to make sure that everybody's had their input into it and the lawyers had a chance to look at it before I put an engineering spin on it.
Oh, we got the lawyers.
Well, the lawyers will end up seeing it. We typically get it to the lawyers once we've kind of gotten it worked out. So I'm hearing a couple of different things. I'm hearing from Joe that it's like we're going to take anybody's comments today, who's our panelists, put those together, take both versions and put it on the August Planning Commission meeting as a topic that'll be discussed by them. Melanie, what are you thinking? What are you thinking?
Tomorrow, we're supposed to report at tomorrow's meeting about what we've been discussing, and certainly I want to bring this up again and
absolutely
say that we're kind of at a dead end, because I know Joe doesn't support this, and I'm willing to tweak it, but I don't hear any suggestions. So I'm going to stick with what we have, and we'll take it to the board tomorrow, the commission tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon.
question I have for Janelle or Robin is, what's the procedure to get the ordinance updated? I mean, the ordinance is very contradictory and it's got impossible conditions for filing an appeal to the what's the thing, Board of Adjustments. And, you know, it's like we can't add more language that would be in this floodplain ordinance without revising what's there. But how do we revise an existing ordinance? Robin? Is that yours or Janelle?
Janelle, but I think in general, if you're just taking about adding this this proposed language to the section of the code, I think you just add it as you were going to. Just put it as a item D.
So
Okay.
Robin, Joe has reviewed the entire floodplain section of the code and has a number of items to fix for the entire code.
Correct, I've seen
To
that.
me, that's a huge lift that will require you, me, FEMA, and a directive from council.
Right.
Because the floodplain regulations that we got came from FEMA. So messing with them will require
That explains a lot, yes.
impact from them or input from them to start addressing them. So just, that is a huge undertaking. And not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it's a huge undertaking that right now it would be best, because I know Robin's busy, I know I'm busy, and that we want to make sure that's a directive we definitely get from council, because I don't want to spend, I don't want to waste anybody's time and effort and energy if there's not support from that. And I want to make sure we have support going into that. So right now, I just want to focus on
the way this ordinance, you could drive a truck through some of the loopholes in there. And I'm not a lawyer. I could drive a truck through there, but it has to be looked at, yes.
Okay, so I think for right now, for the fill item, I think we're gonna take, if Robin and Brent can kind of get me thoughts and comments today, early tomorrow, that then I can put into a packet and get out to the commission for tomorrow night's meeting. I'll make sure that Melanie and Joe, you see it, the entire commission sees it, because we're gonna have this discussion tomorrow night to figure out which way, because I think we're at an impasse here. You both believe there's something needs to be done. We just have a little trouble kind of figuring the exact path forward. And then we're gonna let the commission provide some input. Does that sound like the path forward you guys want to take today?
I think that sounds fine.
Okay. So Robin and Brent, I'm gonna email you both options, and if you guys can get me comments back, I would appreciate that. Is that something you guys can do by like noon tomorrow?
Yeah.
I'll try. You know, I've got like 3 things this afternoon and at least 1 tomorrow morning. So
Okay.
Pressed for a little time. So I'll try, but I can't guarantee. I'll try.
I appreciate that. All right.
See you tomorrow at 6.
Okay, I put together a list of possible topics if we do get directed to extend our review of the regulations. And I'll send that around.
Perfect.
I certainly didn't get through it all, but there were some things that I thought were
Wonderful. Yeah, just send that around. And anything else for today?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've got homework for a couple of people, and then we will discuss this tomorrow night. All right, everybody have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much, and I'll see most of you guys tomorrow.
Okay, bye now.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.